Hello, I'm Eilena Armstrong, Editorial Director and VP with SC Magazine, here with you for another edition of our In Focus videos. And here with me at this year's RSA show is Cobb, who is the security evangelist with Eset. He's also part of the company's research team, and so we're going to pick his brain a little bit and find out a bit more information about what's going on and what not only Eset customers should understand, but what others, our readers, should. So with that said, thank you so much for joining us, Stephen.
Great to be here.
Tell me, RSA always seems to have some sort of hot topic that is coming to the fore. Is anything sort of cropping up that you're finding intriguing that maybe you would want to convey to readers who were unable to attend?
Well, we're early in the show at the moment, and I think there are several topics kind of vying for attention. One that we're particularly interested in is bring your own device. The use of personal devices for work, for computing. And so with the explosion in things like iPods, iPads, Android tablets, smartphones, we're seeing this as a huge challenge to companies because there's a lot of advantage to having your employees enabled with these mobile devices, and there's a lot of kind of push from employees to use their own devices to access company information. Well, that poses a lot of security challenges. The percentage of people who are employed and using personally owned devices for accessing company information is significant. Probably a good 80% of people. And we're fairly confident in saying that a lot of those devices aren't properly protected. They're not being maybe password protected like they should be. They're being used in things like coffee shops with open Wi-Fi, and they're probably not using the level of encryption or the amount of encryption that they should to protect that information should those very small devices get stolen, carried off, and so on.
What about the research that you mentioned a study that you did end of last year, but also are you seeing new sort of favored attack types from hackers that perhaps people aren't as mindful of as they should be?
Well, there's an interesting dichotomy we see in security and have done for many years. I mean, I was at the show in 1996, and the same was true then as it is now, that security people tend to speak in their own world. And we don't realize that although we're very familiar with things like botnets and zombies and Trojan code, a lot of the people who are using computers out there, including managers, particularly in the small to medium enterprise, they're not familiar with these kinds of attacks. And they're not aware that malware as a whole has become a business, and that it's pursued very efficiently, very effectively by the bad guys. And their latest area of attack really is social networks. We're seeing stuff on Facebook which is not just a nuisance, not just a scam, but it's an attempt to infect your computer and recruit it into a botnet, which will then be used for who knows what. You know, your computer could be doing a denial of service attack on the FBI without you knowing it. You know, you could be used by a Russian crime syndicate to carry out online banking attacks from your computer in Omaha.
And so when you do talk to individuals who are coming by, what kind of advice are you giving them to help them convey that message to their CEOs and board members who might not necessarily have the strongest understanding?
Well, one of the things that I'm doing at the show, I have a presentation that I call Malware Incorporated, which is a number of slides that show this side of the malware business, including some of the point-and-click software that you can buy or acquire if you're a bad guy. Things like SpyEye, things like CrimePack. It's permeating throughout the criminal world. We're seeing criminals moving from violent crime, I think, to online crime. And if you show your users these pictures, the scale of this problem and how sophisticated the bad guys are becoming, that I found in presentations I've done to members of the public really kind of makes them sit up and take notice.
One last question, very quickly. It's still somewhat tenuous, the economy. A lot of people are out of work. Are you hearing from your customers that their budgets are improving, that they're remaining flat? And what advice would you give them to sort of overcome any of those resource challenges that they might have?
Well, I think a couple of things. In the high-tech area, the economy is actually doing quite well. And so what we see with technology-oriented companies is they're spending and they're not, I don't think, pulling back on the security, because the more you've been in technology, the more you know security is important. Where the weakness is that we see is the small to medium-sized enterprise, 25 to 250 people. What I tell people in that area is to start with the basics. It's not going to cost you a lot to come up with, first of all, a set of security policies. You know, there are a lot of sample security policies out there, and we're starting to provide some of that information to people, because until you get policies in place, you can't decide which controls to use and where to invest your money. So although security is now a very mature discipline, it's still permeating down to the smaller companies as they realize that they're under attack, they need defenses in place. So let's get you some policies, get organized, look at where your weaknesses are, what's your most sensitive data, how do you protect it?
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us, Stephen. A lot of great insight there.
Appreciate it.
And thank you for being here. We hope you got some great insight, and we'll see you on the next edition of SE in Focus.